We're diving into a story that's got the church world buzzing. And honestly, it's one that's exposing deep cracks in how the modern church handles sin, forgiveness, and accountability. Pastor Landon Schott, founder of Mercy Culture Church, recently visited Robert Morris, the disgraced founder of Gateway Church, while he was serving time in jail. After that visit, Schott declared publicly that God told him Morris is forgiven. But when backlash came pouring in, instead of softening his message, Schott doubled down, calling his critics demonic, vipers, and part of a foul religious spirit. It's a story that touches on theology, trauma, leadership, and the modern church's struggle to balance grace and accountability. So let's unpack this together. What really happened, why people are upset, and what this means for the future of faith leadership. Morris is the founding pastor of Gateway Church in Dallas-Fort Worth, one of America's largest megachurches with more than 25,000 members and massive national reach through TV broadcasts, books, and conferences. But behind that success story lies decades of silence around a dark secret. In October 2025, Morris pleaded guilty to 5 felony counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child. The victim, Cindy Clemisher, was just 12 years old when the abuse began. As part of his plea deal, Morris was sentenced to 6 months in an Oklahoma County jail, ordered to pay $270,000 in restitution, and will be required to register as a sex offender for life. This wasn't a case of false accusation or rumor. It was a criminal conviction based on a guilty plea. And yet, what makes the story even more painful is that people in church leadership reportedly knew for years. Multiple leaders were aware of the allegations but remained silent. In 2005, Cindy even sought money for therapy, and Morris allegedly threatened her with prosecution if she exposed him. That's the context we're walking into: a powerful pastor who committed horrific abuse and a system that protected him for decades. Fast forward to early 2026. Pastor Landon Schott, known for his bold personality and focus on spiritual revival, announces that he has personally visited Robert Morris in jail. After the visit, Schott posts saying that during his time with Morris, God told him that Robert is forgiven. He wrote, "Failure does not get the final word in a surrendered life." He went on to connect Morris's release, scheduled just before Easter, to powerful symbolism: resurrection, new beginnings, restoration. It's a dramatic message, one that paints Morris's upcoming release as a kind of redemption arc. But the reaction online was swift and strong. Survivors of abuse, advocates, and everyday believers flooded social media, accusing Schott of minimizing a crime and spiritualizing abuse. Many pointed out that while forgiveness is a personal matter between an offender and God, public restoration is another story entirely. Because Robert Morris isn't just a sinner who fell. He's a convicted child molester. Declaring him forgiven publicly, without any visible repentance, confession, or victim-centered response, comes off as tone-deaf at best and spiritually manipulative at worst. Let's talk about this tension for a moment. Forgiveness is central to Christianity. Jesus preached mercy, grace, and the power of redemption. But forgiveness was never meant to erase earthly consequences or to bypass justice. When the church emphasizes grace without accountability, it sends a message that powerful men get a free pass while the wounded stay forgotten. And that's what many people see happening here. Because in this case, the focus wasn't on Cindy Clemisher, the survivor. It was on Robert Morris, the abuser, and his supposed redemption story. When a pastor like Schott frames an abuser's jail time as a season of refinement, it risks portraying sin as a temporary setback rather than a devastating act that destroyed someone's childhood. Forgiveness does not equal restoration. Forgiveness is spiritual. Restoration is relational and public. And when a pastor uses his platform to declare someone restored, he's also influencing thousands of people to view that offender as rehabilitated, even when there's no evidence of repentance or accountability. Now let's move to the newest development: the video that reignited the controversy. After days of intense criticism, Landon Schott released a fiery video response. In that video, Schott didn't walk back his comments. Instead, he called his critics demonic, vipers, and accused them of carrying a foul religious spirit. He said that those who questioned his visit to Robert Morris don't do crap for victims, and that their opposition to him was spiritual warfare. That's where many people, even within the church, said, enough. Because when a pastor starts labeling legitimate questions about justice and accountability as demonic attacks, that's no longer about theology. That's spiritual intimidation.
A legion of spirits came out, and normal, sane, God-fearing, God-loving, Bible-believing people saw me visit Pastor Robert in prison and knew what it was. It was walking out the gospel. It was biblical evidence of our love for God. But religious people saw that, and they started manifesting, and they went berserk. And then you got the rogue, pretend journalists that ride around on broomsticks that love to stir up division in the church. They don't build the church, they love to tear it down. And then they start getting involved. I love the comments that I heard constantly by foul religious spirits, which you reminded me of the same Pharisees that attacked Jesus. They tried to trick, they tried to trap, they tried to manipulate, and the end goal was they just wanted Jesus dead. That same spirit got Jesus on the...
This kind of rhetoric is what experts call spiritual abuse, using religious language to silence or shame those who challenge authority. And we've seen this pattern before. When powerful pastors are confronted, they often reframe criticism as persecution instead of reflection. The problem with that mindset is it creates a culture of silence where calling out wrongdoing becomes seen as rebellion instead of righteousness. Let's pause here and think about what's really happening on a deeper level. Schott isn't just defending Morris. He's defending a worldview that places pastors above criticism. In his mind, to question a leader's action is to challenge God's anointed. But the Bible actually calls believers to test every spirit and hold leaders accountable. When leaders equate accountability with demonic attack, they're essentially making themselves untouchable. And that's dangerous. It creates an environment where abusers can thrive because anyone who speaks out gets labeled rebellious, critical, or demonic. And that's exactly the kind of toxic culture survivors have been fighting against for decades. We can't talk about forgiveness without centering the survivor. Cindy Clemishire was 12 years old when her abuse started. She lived through years of silence, fear, and shame. She watched the man who hurt her rise to national prominence while she was told to stay quiet. When pastors now rush to announce his forgiveness and link his release to Easter, it's like reopening that wound. It tells victims that the church's priority is protecting its image, not their healing. Real restoration begins with repentance and restitution, not public declarations of grace. If the church truly believes in mercy, that mercy must start with the broken, not the powerful. This situation isn't just about two pastors. It's a reflection of a much deeper problem in evangelical culture, celebrity Christianity. We've built a system where charisma matters more than character, and where loyalty to leaders outweighs love for truth. We've seen similar dynamics play out in the Ravi Zacharias, Carl Lentz, and Brian Houston scandals, where the image of redemption is fast-tracked, but accountability is slow or non-existent. In all these cases, the church often prioritizes the fallen leader's comeback story over the victim's story. But that's not what Jesus modeled. Jesus lifted the wounded, confronted the powerful, and told the truth, even when it cost him popularity. So when pastors like Landon Schott spiritualize criticism and call people demonic, it's not boldness, it's avoidance. Robert Morris is scheduled for release in April, just before Easter. That timing alone raises questions about how his supporters might frame his return. Will we see a comeback story? Will someone try to re-platform him in ministry? If that happens, it will test how serious the church really is about protecting survivors and maintaining credibility. Because forgiveness doesn't mean giving an abuser a microphone. Forgiveness means acknowledging their sin, ensuring they face consequences, and keeping them away from environments where they could harm again. So, what do we take away from all this? Pastor Landon Schott's visit and his follow-up rant reveal a dangerous confusion between grace and accountability. Forgiveness is personal. Restoration is public. Forgiveness is between God and the sinner. Restoration is between the sinner and the community. When church leaders blur those lines, they risk re-traumatizing victims and discrediting the gospel they claim to preach. For survivors like Cindy Clemishire, the focus should never shift from justice and healing. And for the rest of us watching, it's a call to think critically about who we elevate and why. So what do you think? Was Landon Schott showing true mercy, or was this spiritual manipulation disguised as grace? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you found this analysis helpful, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep following stories like this and holding leaders accountable. Until next time, stay informed, stay thoughtful, and never confuse forgiveness with a free pass.